The phone rang. Its cheerful trill a stark contrast to the quiet hum of my apartment. It was Ethan, my son. My heart, a creature of habit, quickened its pace. It had been weeks since we last spoke, months since we'd shared more than a perfunctory text exchange. His voice when I answered was unusually bright, almost effervescent. "Mom, how are you doing? Listen, I was wondering if you're free this Friday evening. I'd love to take you out, just us. I booked a table at Skyline Terrace. You know, the rooftop restaurant with that incredible view? I heard you've always wanted to go." A smile, hesitant and hopeful, touched my lips. Skyline Terrace was indeed a place I'd mentioned once or twice, years ago during a fleeting moment of shared dreams. It was notorious for its exquisite cuisine and breathtaking cityscapes, as well as its exorbitant prices. Ethan wasn't known for such extravagant gestures, especially not towards me. My internal alarm bells, dulled by the sudden surge of maternal longing, faintly chimed. He wanted something. I knew it in my bones, in the way a mother instinctively understands her child's unspoken intentions, even after years of emotional distance had created a chasm between them. "Skyline Terrace?" I repeated, trying to keep the surprise out of my voice. "That sounds lovely, Ethan. Are you sure? It's awfully expensive." He laughed, a light, airy sound that didn't quite reach his eyes, I imagined. "Nonsense, Mom. It's on me. I just want to spend some quality time with you, catch up properly, you know? It's been too long." Too long indeed. Years had etched lines of worry around my eyes, not just from the passage of time, but from the slow, agonizing drift of my only son. I craved genuine connection, a return to the days when his arms were small and eager around my neck, when my wisdom was his guiding star. Perhaps I thought this was it. Perhaps he was finally ready to bridge the gap. Hope, fragile yet persistent, fluttered in my chest. "Of course, darling. I'd love to," I replied, my voice softer than I intended. The following days were a blur of anticipation and preparation. I pulled out my favorite dress, a deep sapphire silk that still fit remarkably well, and spent an extra hour on my hair and makeup. I wanted to look my best, not just for the sophisticated ambiance of Skyline Terrace, but for Ethan. I wanted him to see me as vibrant, independent, and worthy of his attention. More importantly, I wanted to feel worthy of the genuine reconnection I so desperately hoped for. I practiced conversations in my head, mentally editing out any trace of reproach or longing, focusing only on shared memories, on his achievements, on the pure joy of being his mother. Friday evening arrived, cloaked in a crisp autumn breeze. The ascent in the glass elevator to Skyline Terrace was breathtaking, the city lights blossoming beneath us like a scattered constellation. The restaurant itself was a symphony of hushed elegance. Soft jazz, the clink of silverware, the murmur of polite conversation, and panoramic windows offering an unparalleled view of the metropolis glittering below. My maternal heart, despite my earlier skepticism, softened. This was beautiful. This felt special. Ethan was already at our table, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, a confident, almost theatrical smile on his face. He stood to greet me, pulling out my chair with a flourish I hadn't seen since his high school prom. He looked good, I had to admit. Older, sharper, with an air of sophisticated success. "Mom, you look stunning," he said, his eyes scanning my outfit before settling on my face. Really, truly beautiful. A warmth spread through me. It had been so long since I'd heard such a compliment from him, delivered with such apparent sincerity. He launched into an animated account of his recent promotion at the investment firm, detailing the increased responsibilities, the larger client portfolio, the substantial boost in salary. He spoke with a fervor that was almost boastful, but I found myself listening intently, a knot of conflicting emotions tightening in my chest. Pride, of course, was paramount. This was my son, achieving great things. But beneath the pride, a familiar pang of guilt pricked at me. Had I done enough for him? Had my own struggles, my own choices, inadvertently pushed him towards this relentless pursuit of material success, this emotional distance? He ordered a bottle of exorbitantly priced Cabernet Sauvignon, waving away the sommelier's recommendations for anything less. "Only the best for my mom," he declared, raising his glass once it was poured. "To new beginnings, Mom, to us." I raised my glass, meeting his gaze, trying to decipher the glint in his eyes. Was it genuine affection or something else? As the evening progressed, I found myself observing him more closely. Despite his confident pronouncements and elaborate stories, a subtle undercurrent of nervousness permeated his demeanor. His eyes darted around the room more frequently than necessary. He checked his watch with increasing regularity, a discreet glance, then another, almost imperceptibly. His fingers drummed a silent rhythm on the tablecloth when he thought I wasn't looking. My mother's intuition, that stubborn, insistent voice in the back of my mind, began to scream. Something was wrong. "Excuse me for a moment, Mom," Ethan said suddenly, pushing back his chair. "I just need to use the restroom." He left, leaving me alone at the elegant table, surrounded by the soft hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses. I watched his retreating back, a strange unease settling over me. My gaze drifted back to my half-finished glass of wine, then to his, still almost full. It was then that a figure approached my table. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in the dark uniform of the restaurant's security detail. His name tag read Samuel. Samuel stopped a respectful distance from my table, his expression unreadable, almost grim. He leaned in slightly, his voice a low, urgent whisper that barely reached my ears above the ambient noise. "Ma'am," he began, his eyes scanning the room quickly, "I'm sorry to intrude, but I need to tell you something. I saw your son, Mr. Ethan, put something in your drink just before he went to the restroom." The word struck me with the force of a physical blow. My breath hitched. My mind, usually so sharp, felt suddenly sluggish, struggling to process the horrifying accusation. My son put something in my drink? It was unthinkable. A cold, visceral fear seized me, gripping my throat, making my heart pound an erratic rhythm against my ribs. Denial, fierce and immediate, surged through me. No, not Ethan. My son wouldn't. He couldn't. But Samuel's eyes, steady and sincere, held a truth I couldn't ignore. "I've been watching him for a while," he continued, his voice still hushed. "His behavior was unusual. He was very clumsy with the napkin when he briefly covered your glass. Please, ma'am, when he returns, switch your glasses. Don't let him see you do it. Switch glasses." The words echoed in the sudden ringing silence of my mind. A flash of memory, sharp and unsettling, cut through the fog of shock. Last week I had found Ethan lingering in my study, a room he rarely frequented. He'd been standing oddly close to my antique writing desk, where I kept important documents. My will, specifically. I had dismissed it then, a fleeting oddity. Now the pieces clicked into place with a horrifying, sickening precision. The overly cheerful phone call, the expensive dinner, the insistent quality time, his nervousness, the constant watch-checking, the feigned affection, it all coalesced into a monstrous, undeniable reality. My son was trying to poison me. My hands trembled, but I forced them to remain still, gripping the edge of the tablecloth beneath the table. I had to think. I had to act. My mind raced, calculating, assessing. Samuel's warning was my only shield. I couldn't alert Ethan, not yet. I couldn't let him know I knew. I needed help. Immediate help. With practiced composure, I reached for my phone, my fingers flying across the keypad. I typed a quick, cryptic message to the one person I could trust implicitly, the one person who would understand the urgency without question. My sister, Clara. "Call me in 10 minutes, emergency." The seconds stretched into an eternity as I waited for Ethan to return. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the elegant quiet of the restaurant. My palms were slick with sweat, but my mind, surprisingly, had found a chilling clarity. The initial shock had given way to a cold, hard resolve. Samuel's warning echoed. "When he returns, switch your glasses. Don't let him see you do it." Then there he was, strolling back to the table, a relaxed, almost smug smile playing on his lips. His eyes, when they met mine, held a glint of triumph, an expectancy that twisted my stomach. He seemed completely at ease, as if his brief absence had recharged him, filling him with a renewed, darker purpose. "Everything all right, Mom?" he asked, his voice smooth, unaffected. He took his seat opposite me, his gaze lingering on my wine glass. "Shall we have another toast?" To the future, perhaps? My hand, trembling almost imperceptibly, reached for my glass. My fingers brushed the stem, the chill of the crystal, a stark contrast to the burning dread within me. My eyes flickered to his glass, then back to mine. This was it, the moment. With a casual, almost imperceptible movement, as if adjusting my position in the chair, I extended my arm just a fraction, my fingers brushing his glass. In one swift, practiced motion, I swapped them. The subtle shift was masked by the low light, the tablecloth, and the brief distraction of my body leaning slightly to one side. He didn't notice. His gaze was still on my glass, the one that was now his. To the future, I echoed, my voice a little reedy, but I hoped it sounded like emotion, not terror. I raised the glass that had been his, the one Samuel had indicated was safe. Ethan, meanwhile, confidently lifted the glass that had been mine, the one he had tampered with. We drank simultaneously. I took a cautious sip, the expensive Cabernet tasting like ashes in my mouth, but I forced myself to swallow. Ethan, however, threw back a much larger gulp, draining nearly half the glass in one go, a triumphant smirk on his face. He watched me over the rim of his glass, his eyes bright, expectant, as if waiting for a show to begin. The effect was alarmingly fast. Within mere minutes of aluminium, a subtle change began to creep over him. The sharp, confident edge in his eyes softened, then blurred. His eyelids, once bright and alert, grew heavy, drooping as if weighed down by an invisible force. His head, which had been held so erect, began to list to one side. When he tried to speak, his words came out slurred, the syllables running into each other, unintelligible. He blinked slowly, as if fighting an internal battle, his gaze unfocused. "Ethan?" I said, my voice carefully modulated to convey concern, not the chilling triumph I felt. "Are you all right? You seem a little tired." He mumbled something, a thick guttural sound that could have been agreement or protest, I couldn't tell. He tried to straighten up, but his body seemed to betray him, swaying precariously in his seat. The smugness had vanished, replaced by a confused, drowsy disorientation. "Perhaps we should go home," I suggested, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "You're clearly not feeling well." "I can drive." A wave of nausea washed over me. The exquisite dinner, the elegant ambiance, the expensive wine, it all suddenly felt like a grotesque parody of familial affection. My son, my flesh and blood, had intended to incapacitate me, to render me helpless, vulnerable. The devastating clarity of it all hit me like a physical blow. This was no celebration, no attempt at genuine reconnection. This was something far more sinister, a premeditated act of betrayal cloaked in the guise of a lavish dinner. The golden trap had been set, meticulously crafted, its bait irresistible, but I was no longer the intended prey. Getting Ethan out of the restaurant was an ordeal. He had succumbed almost completely to the sedative, his body a dead weight, his movements clumsy and uncoordinated. He mumbled incoherently, occasionally trying to push me away with surprising bursts of strength, only to sag against me moments later. I hooked his arm over my shoulder, supporting the bulk of his weight, plastering a worried maternal expression on my face for the benefit of the curious glances we drew. "Just a bit too much wine," I muttered to the hostess, who offered assistance, forcing a tight smile. "He's not usually like this." The lie felt bitter on my tongue, but it was necessary. Outside, the cool night air did little to revive him. I wrestled him into the passenger seat of my car, buckling him in with hands that trembled, but did not falter. As I started the engine, my mind raced, a whirlwind of questions, suspicions, and a growing, horrifying understanding. What drug had he used? What was its purpose? And what exactly had his true plans been once I was incapacitated? The thought sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the night's chill. The drive home was quiet, save for the low hum of the engine and Ethan's increasingly slurred mumblings. He seemed to be drifting in and out of a semi-conscious state, his words fragmented, dreamlike, yet terrifyingly revealing. "The papers," he muttered, his head lolling against the headrest. "Need to get to the papers before she changes her mind." My grip on the steering wheel tightened, my knuckles white. The papers. My will. My estate documents. The connection was undeniable, sickeningly clear. Signatures, he mumbled again, a faint, almost satisfied chuckle escaping his lips. When she's sleeping, it'll be easy. Just a few signatures. A cold dread spread through my stomach, far worse than any nausea. It was a visceral understanding of the depth of his treachery. He hadn't just intended to incapacitate me for a night. He planned to drug me into oblivion, then forge my signature on documents, presumably to gain control of my assets, perhaps even my entire estate. My own son, the boy I had nurtured, loved, sacrificed for. He was trying to steal from me, to write me out of my own life, perhaps permanently. The thought was unbearable, a betrayal so profound it shattered something fundamental within me. The image of the new beginnings he had toasted, twisted into a grotesque tableau of deceit and greed. The headlights cut through the city's night, illuminating the rain-slicked streets as I drove. My son slumped in the passenger seat beside me. Ethan drifted in and out of consciousness, his fragmented words a chilling soundtrack to the nightmare unfolding around me. Each slurred syllable, each half-formed phrase, was another shard of ice piercing my heart, confirming the horrifying truth that had begun to dawn at Skyline Terrace. "She'll never know," he mumbled, his voice thick with the sedative, a faint, almost childlike whine to it. "Just a little sleep. So easy." My grip on the steering wheel tightened, my knuckles white against the dark leather. "Never know." The words resonated with a sickening finality, extinguishing any lingering embers of doubt. He hadn't just intended to swindle me, he planned to do it stealthily, covertly, leaving me none the wiser until it was too late. He had meticulously plotted to exploit my trust, my love, my very vulnerability, all under the guise of filial affection. The papers he'd mentioned earlier solidified in my mind, stark and terrifying. My will, my estate, everything I had worked for, everything I hoped to pass on responsibly. He intended to forge my signature, to strip me of control, to rewrite my legacy while I lay helpless. Waves of devastation washed over me, crashing against the fragile walls I had built around my emotions. How could a child I had loved so fiercely, raised with such care, harbor such cold, calculating malice? The boy who once clung to my hand, who sought my comfort, had grown into a stranger capable of unimaginable betrayal. The magnitude of his deception was a bottomless pit of despair, threatening to swallow me whole. Yet beneath the crushing weight of heartbreak, a stubborn ember of defiance flickered to life. I would not be his victim. We finally reached his apartment building, a modern, glass-fronted structure that seemed to mock the disarray of his life and intentions. Getting the now almost fully unconscious Ethan out of the car and into the elevator was a struggle. His head lolled against my shoulder, his breathing heavy and shallow. I pressed the button for his floor, my heart still pounding, a frantic rhythm against my ribs. As the elevator doors opened, Mrs. Lim, a spry, inquisitive woman who lived across the hall from Ethan, was just stepping out of her own apartment, watering can in hand. Her eyes widened slightly at the sight of me half carrying my son. "Oh, Eleanor, is Ethan all right?" she asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "He looks rather unwell." I forced a strained smile, summoning every ounce of my composure. "Just a bit too much celebratory wine, Mrs. Lim," I managed, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "He had a big promotion, you see. He's not used to such revelry." The lie felt like ash on my tongue, but I needed to maintain the facade to keep Ethan's sinister plot hidden for now. Mrs. Lim nodded, her expression still a little skeptical, but she didn't press. Inside Ethan's apartment, the scene was far from the polished image of a successful executive he tried to project. The living room was a chaotic mess of discarded takeout containers, stacks of unopened mail, and a general air of neglect. Dust motes danced in the dim light, revealing surfaces coated in a fine layer of grime. It was a stark contrast to the luxurious restaurant, a silent testament to a life that was unraveling behind the carefully constructed veneer of success. My heart ached anew, not just for the betrayal, but for the son I clearly didn't truly know, the son who was living in this disarray. I gently but firmly maneuvered Ethan into his bedroom. He was completely unresponsive now, a dead weight in my arms. I lowered him onto his bed, pulling a blanket over his inert form. His face, slack in sleep, looked young and innocent, a cruel trick of the light that tore at my already frayed emotions. My son, lying there, a victim of his own making, yet still the perpetrator of a horrifying crime against me. The sight broke my heart into a million pieces, but I knew with a fierce resolve that I couldn't stop there. I needed answers. I needed to understand the full extent of his depravity. Overriding every instinct that screamed against invading his privacy, a wave of guilt momentarily washing over me, I spotted his laptop on a small, cluttered desk in the corner of the room. It was open, the screen glowing faintly, displaying his email inbox. The choice was clear: succumb to maternal guilt and walk away, or delve into the dark corners of his digital life to uncover the truth. The evening's events had stripped away my hesitation. I had to know. My fingers, still slightly shaky, navigated to his browser history. What I found there sent a fresh wave of icy dread through me, chilling me to the bone. The search terms were stark, incriminating, and utterly damning. How long does Ambien take to work? Mixing sleep medication with alcohol effects. Legal consequences of document forgery. How to change inheritance documents. Each search term was a hammer blow, confirming my worst fears, painting a horrifyingly clear picture of his premeditated malice. He hadn't just impulsively drugged me. He had researched it. He had planned it. He had even looked into the legal ramifications, not out of fear, but perhaps to calculate his risks, to ensure his escape. He intended to not only incapacitate me, but to legally strip me of my assets, using fraudulent means. The son I had known, the son I had loved, was gone. In his place was a calculating, ruthless individual, driven by a greed that knew no bounds. The revelation was crushing, a betrayal that went beyond comprehension. The glow from Ethan's laptop screen illuminated the chaos of his room, casting long, distorted shadows that mirrored the twisted reality I was now facing. I sank into the desk chair, the cold, hard plastic a stark contrast to the burning inferno in my chest. The search history had been a devastating blow, but it was only the beginning. It wasn't just impulsive greed. This was premeditated. This was researched. My son had meticulously planned my downfall. My fingers, numb with shock, navigated further through his browser history. The forums he visited were equally disturbing. Legal advice platforms, online communities discussing inheritance law, and threads specifically addressing how to contest a will if forgery or undue influence was suspected. He wasn't just planning to forge documents. He was building a defensive strategy, anticipating potential challenges, preparing to weave a web of lies if his initial plan failed. Then I found them. Draft emails. Not just one, but several, addressed to various legal firms specializing in estate disputes. In them, Ethan painted a fabricated picture of me, Eleanor, his dear mother, as increasingly confused, forgetful, and at times incompetent. He described erratic behavior, irrational decisions, and a growing detachment from reality, all designed to portray me as incapable of managing my own affairs. He even mentioned my recent update to my will, framing it as a symptom of my supposed mental decline, a rash decision made under duress or delusion. He was constructing a narrative, a paper trail designed to discredit me, to challenge my updated will should the need arise. He was building a case against his own mother. The updated will. A fresh wave of sorrow washed over me. I had updated my will just a few months prior, not out of spite, but out of thoughtful consideration for the legacy I wanted to leave. I had made provisions for several charities close to my heart, organizations that championed causes I deeply believed in, alongside ensuring Ethan would be comfortably provided for. But in his twisted perception, these charitable decisions were not acts of altruism. They were acts of theft, robbing him of what he believed was rightfully his. My generosity, my desire to make a positive impact, had simply fueled his resentment and intensified his greed. I knew I had to dig deeper. My gaze fell upon a small metal filing cabinet next to the desk, partially obscured by a stack of old magazines. Against every instinct, I pulled open the top drawer. Inside, nestled among utility bills and bank statements, I found a folder. My name was scrawled on it in Ethan's hurried hand. With trembling fingers, I opened it. Inside were copies of my old will, the one that left everything, every last penny, to him. He had kept it, hoarded it, perhaps even cherished it, envisioning a future where my entire estate would be his, without question, without sharing. This was not just about money. It was about absolute control, about erasing my choices and substituting them with his own. Beneath the wills, I found another folder, neatly labeled Financial Planning. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth. This wasn't planning, it was predatory calculation. Inside were meticulous spreadsheets, detailing every aspect of my assets, property values, investment portfolios, bank balances, retirement funds. He had calculated my net worth down to the last dollar, dissecting my financial life with the cold precision of a predator sizing up its prey. There were printouts from real estate websites listing recent sales in my neighborhood, contact information for various real estate agents, and even rough timelines for quick sales. He wasn't just looking to inherit, he was planning to liquidate, to cash out as fast as possible. This was no longer just about a son wanting nice things, as I had once deluded myself into believing. This was about deep-seated financial desperation, a desperate struggle for survival cloaked in a veneer of success. My eyes scanned further, finding the true heart of his financial planning. A stack of unpaid bills, letters from creditors, maxed out credit card statements, one from a premium bank showing a staggering balance of $12,000, another from a different institution, $18,000, a third, an even higher $23,000. Each bill a fresh wound. Late rent notices, clearly marked with penalty fees, the sum a shocking $4,800, threatening eviction. Rejected loan applications were tucked between the statements, accompanied by curt, impersonal letters detailing his poor credit history and lack of collateral. Frantic emails to creditors and collection agencies filled his inbox, desperate pleas for extensions, promises of imminent payment, and a chillingly specific phrase repeated in several messages. I will be receiving a substantial inheritance very soon. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place, forming a picture so ugly, so utterly heartbreaking, that it took my breath away. His boasts of a promotion, the expensive dinner, the tailored suit, all a carefully constructed illusion. He wasn't successful. He was drowning. Drowning in debt, in lies, in a desperate struggle to maintain a facade he couldn't afford. He hadn't invited me to dinner out of love or a desire for connection. He had invited me because he was at the end of his rope, and I, his mother, was his last, most desperate, and most profitable option. He wasn't just after my money. He was after a lifeline, and he was willing to drug and defraud his own mother to get it. The depth of his betrayal, fueled by such raw, unadulterated desperation, left me feeling hollowed out, utterly bereft. If you're finding this story as shocking as I am, please do me a favor. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. You won't believe how this unravels. The financial ruin I had just uncovered was devastating, but it was nothing compared to the fresh wave of horror that washed over me next. Buried amidst the piles of unpaid bills and legal drafts, I found a printed email exchange. It was between Ethan and his girlfriend, Brooke. My heart sank, a leaden weight in my chest. I had always found Brooke a little too sweet, a little too eager to please, but I had never suspected her of anything truly malicious. Now, the email shattered that illusion. The first email from Ethan to Brooke was dated a few weeks prior. "Once the old lady is out of the picture," he wrote, the casual cruelty of the phrase making my stomach churn, "we can finally start our real life together. No more struggling, no more waiting, just us and all the freedom we deserve." My breath hitched. Out of the picture. The words resonated with a sinister undertone that went far beyond mere financial fraud. Was this about more than just money? Was I merely an obstacle to be removed? Brooke's reply, dated a day later, was laced with a feigned concern that made my blood run cold. "Ethan, are you sure you're not doing anything dangerous? I mean, this sounds risky. What if something goes wrong?" Her words, rather than offering comfort, confirmed her complicity, her awareness of his dark intentions. She wasn't questioning the morality of his actions, only the potential consequences for him. Ethan's next email to her was chillingly dismissive of her worries, brimming with the same arrogance and misguided confidence he had displayed at dinner. "Don't worry, my love, it's foolproof. She trusts me completely. A few pills in her wine, a quiet night, and it'll all be over. I'll just slip into her place while she's sleeping and take care of the paperwork. She won't even know what hit her until it's too late. She's just an obstacle, Brooke. Nothing more. A necessary step to our future." The casual tone, the utter disregard for my humanity, the dehumanization of me as an obstacle, sent a wave of icy dread through me. He wasn't just planning to forge documents, he was orchestrating a complete takeover of my life, reducing me to a mere inconvenience. The phrase "out of the picture" echoed in my mind, growing louder, more terrifying. My initial thought had been that he meant out of the financial picture, out of his way to access my money. But as I reread his words, a more monstrous possibility began to emerge, a thought so dark it stole the air from my lungs. I had a heart condition, a minor one, but still. A combination of a powerful sedative, especially Ambien, which his search history suggested, and alcohol could be lethal, particularly for someone my age with any underlying health issues. Had he chosen the drug specifically for that reason? Had he considered, even desired, a permanent solution to his obstacle? Had my son, my own flesh and blood, planned to kill me? The thought was a venomous serpent coiling in my gut, choking me with its horror. It was a monstrous, unspeakable betrayal that went beyond the boundaries of any crime I could have ever imagined. I looked at the evidence, the elaborate dinner, the drugged wine, the detailed research into forgery, the fabricated legal case against me, the cold, calculating emails with Brooke. It was all there, a tapestry of deception so meticulously woven, so utterly devoid of empathy, that it shattered any remaining vestiges of the son I thought I knew. The kind, charming boy was a ghost. In his place was a calculating predator, driven by a greed that knew no moral bounds. From the bedroom, a soft, rhythmic sound broke the silence. Ethan was snoring, deep and peaceful, oblivious to my presence, oblivious to the world that had just imploded around me. He was likely dreaming, I thought with a bitter twist of my lips, dreaming of his rightful inheritance, of the life of luxury he believed was now within his grasp, purchased at the cost of his mother's life and dignity. The sound of his peaceful sleep mocked my pain, my devastation, my shattered trust. But in that moment, as I listened to his oblivious breathing, something within me hardened. The grief, the shock, the heartbreak, they coalesced into a cold, unwavering resolve. He thought he had outsmarted me. He thought he had planned every detail. He thought I was just an old lady who could be easily manipulated, easily erased. He was wrong, so terribly, terribly wrong. A fierce determination surged through me. If Ethan wanted to play games with my future, then it was time he learned that his 63-year-old mother still had a few surprises of her own. He had made his move, and it was a foul one. Now it was my turn, and I would make sure his new beginnings would be anything but what he expected. While he slept off the sedative, oblivious to the consequences of his actions, I knew I had a lot of work to do. My counter-strategy was already beginning to form. The night passed in a blur of furious activity. While Ethan lay comatose in his bedroom, his gentle snores a perverse counterpoint to my silent rage, I meticulously documented every single piece of evidence I had uncovered. My phone's camera clicked relentlessly, capturing images of credit card statements, late rent notices, the incriminating emails, and the horrifying search history. Each photo was a nail hammered into the coffin of our relationship, each screenshot a testament to his betrayal. My hands, no longer trembling with fear, now moved with a steady, purposeful resolve. Digging deeper into his digital footprint, I uncovered something even more disturbing. A meticulously detailed mom's schedule hidden within a folder on his desktop. It outlined my daily routines, my weekly appointments, even my regular grocery shopping trips. It was chilling surveillance, a stark revelation of how closely he had been watching me, Not out of love, but out of a calculating desire to exploit my patterns. His browser bookmarks included articles on elder financial exploitation techniques, signs of cognitive decline in seniors, and how to access an elder's bank accounts. He wasn't just after my money, he was systematically planning my disempowerment. Then I found text messages between Ethan and Brooke, a series of exchanges even more damning than their emails. They discussed Plan B if the dinner didn't go smoothly, mentioning something about her policy. My blood ran cold. Her policy. My life insurance. I remembered with a sickening jolt that I had named Ethan as the sole beneficiary years ago, after his father passed. In his twisted mind, that policy, my very life, had become an asset, a contingency plan for his financial woes. I had unknowingly put a price on my own head. The thought was a chilling realization that solidified the monstrous truth. He had considered, perhaps even hoped for, my death. As dawn approached, painting the apartment with a faint, unforgiving light, I paused. My phone chimed softly. It was Clara, my sister, calling me back after my emergency text. I stepped out of Ethan's apartment and found a quiet corner in the deserted hallway. "Clara," I whispered, keeping my voice low. "I'm all right. Everything's under control, but I can't talk right now. Not fully. I'll explain everything later today. Just know I'm safe and I'm handling it. But I need you to be ready to act on a moment's notice." Clara, ever the pragmatist, simply said, "Understood. Call me when you can. Be careful." My options swirled in my mind. Confront Ethan directly, call the police and present the mountain of evidence I'd collected, or simply pretend ignorance, sever ties, and disappear. Each option had its merits, its pitfalls. But a fourth option, a bolder, more dangerous path, began to crystallize in my mind. I would play his game. I would use his underestimation of me, his belief in my trusting naivete, against him. He thought he was the master manipulator. I would show him that his 63-year-old mother was far from a helpless pawn. Before the first rays of full daylight could touch his curtains, before he stirred from his drug-induced slumber, I slipped out of his apartment, the evidence secured on my phone, a renewed sense of power coursing through my veins. The tears I had shed earlier were gone, replaced by a steely resolve. The next morning my phone rang. It was Ethan. His voice was rough, a little slurred, feigning concern. "Mom, are you all right? Last night was a bit hazy. I must have had too much wine. I hope I wasn't too much trouble." I took a deep breath, schooling my voice to sound exactly as he would expect. Slightly groggy, a little confused, but utterly oblivious. "Oh, Ethan, darling. Yes, I'm fine. A little tired, perhaps. You really did overdo it, didn't you? But don't worry about it. These things happen." I kept my tone light, forgiving, exactly what he would anticipate from his doting, unsuspecting mother. A sigh of relief, audible even over the phone, emanated from his end. He had bought it. He believed his plan had worked, that I was none the wiser, a blank slate for his continued machinations. "That's a relief," he said, his voice regaining some of its earlier confidence. "Listen, Mom, I was wondering if I could come by this afternoon. I've been thinking about your investments. With my new promotion, I have access to some incredible opportunities, truly exclusive. I think we could really grow your portfolio, safeguard your future. We could look over your documents, explore some options." His words, once designed to sound like genuine concern, now rang with a hollow, sinister echo. "Safeguard your future," he'd said, when all he truly intended was to plunder it. "Look over your documents," when he meant to forge them. He was coming to finish the job, to seize his inheritance. "That sounds wonderful, Ethan," I said, my voice sweet and accommodating. "Why don't you come over around 2? We can have some tea, and you can tell me all about these exciting opportunities." He agreed, his voice betraying a hint of eagerness, of triumph. He thought he had me exactly where he wanted me. He had no idea I was preparing for the most important conversation of my life, a conversation that would not involve investments, but justice. As soon as I hung up, my hands flew into action. I retrieved all my sensitive financial documents, my will, my deeds, my bank statements, and secured them in a safety deposit box at my bank. Then, with a practiced hand, I set up my phone, discreetly positioning it to record every single word of our interaction. The game was on, and I was ready to play. At precisely 2 o'clock, the doorbell chimed. I took a deep breath, adjusted the tiny microphone on my lapel, and smoothed down my dress. This was it, the confrontation. When I opened the door, Ethan stood there, charming as ever, a bouquet of my favorite roses clutched in his hand. His eyes, however, darted past me, scanning the hallway, lingering for a fraction of a second on the closed door of my home office, where he clearly expected my documents to be. The flowers, the smile, the feigned concern, all a carefully constructed performance. "Mom, you look wonderful," he said, handing me the roses. "And I'm so glad you're feeling better after last night. I really did overdo it, didn't I?" So unlike me. He chuckled, a practiced, self-deprecating sound. "Come in, Ethan," I said, my voice calm, almost serene. "Tea is just brewing." We settled into the living room, the scent of fresh roses filling the air, a stark contrast to the tension crackling between us. He launched into his pitch, a grand tale about a revolutionary new marketing venture that promised astronomical returns. He spoke with a practiced ease, throwing around terms like disruptive innovation and early-stage equity, his eyes bright with a false enthusiasm. After a lengthy, elaborate preamble, he finally got to the point, his voice softening conspiratorially. "So, Mom," he began, leaning forward, "this is where you come in. This is an exclusive opportunity, time-sensitive. I need capital, and I immediately thought of you. I was hoping you could see your way to giving me an early inheritance. Say, $50,000? It's a small investment for you, a huge leap for my venture, and a chance for you to see your generosity pay off while you're still around to enjoy it." I took a slow sip of my tea, the warmth a welcome anchor against the cold, calculated audacity of his request. This was it. This was the direct ask he would have made, or perhaps, even worse, extracted through forgery, if his sedative plan had succeeded. He was painting it as an investment, a benevolent act, but in my mind, it was simply a demand, an entitlement, a further attempt to strip me of my financial autonomy. $50,000, Ethan? I asked gently, my gaze unwavering. That's a considerable sum, and you mentioned last night when you were a little confused something about investment mistakes and financial difficulty. Is everything all right with your current ventures? Your promotion sounded so promising. His carefully constructed facade flickered. His eyes darted away, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. "Mom, you know how it is," he stammered, running a hand through his hair. "The market can be volatile. I've had a few setbacks, nothing major, just some temporary liquidity issues. This new venture, though, this is the one that will turn everything around. It's guaranteed." He was still lying. Temporary liquidity issues was a far cry from the mountainous debt I had seen on his laptop. He admitted to financial difficulty, but he downplayed the true extent of his peril, the $73,000 credit card debt, the late rent, the desperate emails. He still believed I was easily fooled. "The partnership opportunity," he pressed on, trying to regain control. "It expires this Friday. We need to move quickly, Mom. This is a golden chance." "Friday?" I repeated, feigning thoughtful consideration. "That's rather soon. I'd need some time to think this over, perhaps consult with my financial advisor, Mr. Davies." His composure cracked. The charming facade shattered, revealing the raw resentment beneath. "Mr. Davies?" he scoffed, his voice sharp, laced with contempt. "Why do you always have to be so difficult, Mom? Why can't you just trust me? You never trusted me, did you? You always held me back, always made me feel like I wasn't enough. You spent all that money on your charities, on your causes, while I struggled. Don't you think I deserve this? After everything I've been through, everything I put up with growing up? This is my inheritance, Mom, my rightful share." His words were a bitter torrent, revealing a deep-seated entitlement, a twisted perception of reality. He wasn't asking for help. He was demanding what he believed was owed to him, fueled by years of unspoken resentment. The mask was completely off. I sat there calm and still, refusing to be the helpless, emotional mother he expected. The recording device captured every word, every venomous accusation. "Ethan," I said, my voice steady, "I think we're done here for today. I need time to consider your proposal." He stormed out, slamming the door behind him, leaving the scent of roses and the bitter tang of his betrayal in the air. As soon as he was gone, I sprang into action. My first call was to Julia Evans, my attorney. I recounted the entire horrifying saga, from the drugged wine to the printed emails, to his desperate financial situation, and finally his resentful outburst. Her calm, professional demeanor was a balm to my soul, but her voice held a note of genuine concern. "Eleanor," she said, "this is extremely serious. We could go to the police right now." I paused. The thought of Ethan in handcuffs, facing criminal charges, brought a fresh wave of pain. As monstrous as his actions were, he was still my son. "Not yet, Julia," I decided. "I want to explore other options first. I want him to face consequences, yes, but perhaps there's a way for him to understand the gravity of what he's done without completely destroying his life. I want to protect myself and my estate permanently." I still harbored a faint, foolish hope that a hard lesson might lead to some form of redemption. Julia immediately began the process of restructuring my estate. We removed Ethan as a beneficiary from my life insurance policy, replacing him with a charity I had always admired. My assets were placed into a revocable trust, a legal shield that would protect them from any further attempts at manipulation or fraud. The trust was designed to offer Ethan a modest, managed stipend under very strict conditions, contingent on his rehabilitation and demonstrated financial responsibility, should he ever manage to turn his life around. It was a lifeline, not a handout, and it was entirely under my control. It was a measure of protection, and perhaps a tiny, desperate flicker of continued hope. With Julia Evans's guidance, the new trust was meticulously crafted. It was a testament to both my enduring love for my son and my resolute stand against his destructive behavior. The conditions for any larger distributions from the trust were stringent, designed to foster genuine responsibility rather than enable his self-destructive tendencies. Ethan would need to demonstrate consistent employment, undergo regular drug testing, attend financial counseling, and complete a set amount of community service for a period of 5 years before he could access any substantial funds. Even then, the distributions would be managed, ensuring they were used for legitimate, life-affirming purposes. My life insurance beneficiary was irrevocably changed, not to another family member, but to a prominent charity dedicated to assisting victims of elder financial abuse. It felt like a small act of defiance, a way to turn his intended crime into a force for good. A crucial clause was added to all my legal documents. Any future attempt by Ethan to harm me, defraud me, or contest my will would result in the immediate and permanent forfeiture of all benefits from the trust. This was my ultimate safeguard, my final line in the sand. Mr. Davies, my financial advisor, moved with equal speed and efficiency. All my financial accounts were updated, new complex passwords put in place, and alerts set for any unusual activity. Most of my liquid assets were transferred to harder-to-access investment accounts, further securing them against any illicit attempts. I was building an impenetrable fortress around my financial life, closing every loophole Ethan might try to exploit. Then I waited. I knew Ethan's desperation would drive him to me again. He was cornered, drowning in debt, and his foolproof plan had failed. It was only a matter of time. The call came Friday evening, just as the deadline for his supposed partnership opportunity would have expired. His voice, when I answered, was strained, laced with a forced apology. "Mom, I'm really sorry about my outburst yesterday. I was just so passionate about this venture, and I know I can be a bit intense, but I really need that $50,000, Mom. It's truly a once-in-a-lifetime chance." My heart ached, but my resolve held firm. "Ethan," I said, my voice calm, clear, devoid of the emotional manipulation he expected, "I appreciate your apology, but I told you I needed time to think. And after much consideration, I simply cannot provide you with the $50,000. His anger flared, raw and exposed. "What, Mom? That's ridiculous. You have over $400,000 in assets. You're sitting on a fortune and you won't help your own son? I need this, Mom. My whole future depends on it. My assets are not your ATM, Ethan, I replied, my voice unwavering. And my future is not something you can gamble away. You'll have to live with the consequences of your choices. The line went dead. He had hung up on me. My heart throbbed, a dull ache, but I felt a strange sense of empowerment. I had stood my ground. Immediately, I alerted Clara, telling her the conversation was over and to be vigilant. I also strengthened my home security, changing the locks and installing new cameras. I knew his desperation could turn dangerous. Over the next few weeks, Ethan tried various approaches. There were tearful, emotionally manipulative emails, blaming me for his failures. He showed up at my door, disheveled and distraught, begging for help. He tried to appeal to my guilt, my love, my maternal instincts. But I stood firm, adhering to the advice of Julia and Mr. Davies, and more importantly, to the lesson I had learned from his betrayal. I loved him, yes, but I would not enable him. Then, 6 weeks after our last conversation, the call came again. This time, his voice was different. Broken, he was crying, truly crying, not the manipulative tears I had seen before. "Mom," he choked out, I lost my apartment. I have nowhere to go. I'm drowning, Mom. I'm so lost." My breath caught in my throat. This was it, rock bottom. But amidst the despair, I heard something else, genuine remorse. And then the words I had longed to hear, but never truly expected. "I don't even care about the money anymore, Mom. I need help, real help. I think I need counseling. I think I have a problem." "I love you, Ethan," I said, my voice thick with emotion, but firm. "I always have. But love doesn't mean enabling destructive behavior. If you are truly ready for help, for real change, then I am here for you." That night, we had our first truly honest conversation in years. He confessed everything. The extent of his debt, which was even higher than I had found, closer to $73,000, not including the rent. His gambling problem, his failed ventures, his desperation, his shame and dying, and then the hardest confession of all. "Mom," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I know what I did. I saw your search history on my laptop. The Ambien, the forgery. I could have seriously hurt you with that pill. I was so angry, so greedy, so lost. I don't know what came over me." The admission was a painful balm to my soul. The truth finally was out. The path to recovery, however long and arduous, had finally begun. Ethan's confession that night, raw and tearful, was not an ending, but a fragile beginning. Rebuilding the trust that had been so brutally shattered would be a monumental task, a journey measured not in days or weeks, but in years. There were no immediate hugs, no facile declarations of forgiveness. There was only the quiet, arduous process of facing the truth, of taking responsibility for the damage inflicted, and of charting a path forward, one difficult step at a time. 2 years later, I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, overlooking the bustling harbor. The salty air carried the cries of gulls and the distant hum of city life, a vibrant symphony that mirrored the renewed vigor within me. The old house, with its ghosts and its memories, had been sold, and with the proceeds, I had bought this beautiful, sun-drenched space outright. It was smaller, yes, but it was entirely mine, free from the shadow of past hurts. I had spent months decorating it, finding my own style, creating a sanctuary that felt authentic and truly reflected who I was now. My relationship with Ethan was still a delicate thing, like a fragile plant slowly growing back after a harsh winter. We talked once a month, careful, genuine conversations that revolved around his progress, his challenges, his small victories. He was attending therapy diligently, working steadily at a job he had found in marketing as, ironically, not the grand venture he'd lied about, but a legitimate one. He was slowly, painfully paying down his debts. His $500 monthly stipend from the trust, a lifeline rather than a handout, was meticulously managed, contingent on documented proof of his therapy attendance, consistent employment, and quarterly meetings with Julia Evans, who acted as a neutral arbiter and guide. He had managed to pay off a significant portion of his original debt, about $12,000, but still faced another 4 years of hard work. I earned this situation, Mom, he'd said to me recently, his voice devoid of its former arrogance. And I have to work my way out of it. There are no shortcuts. It was a humbling admission, a clear sign that the hard lessons were finally taking root. For my part, I had found a new purpose that filled the void his betrayal had left. I began volunteering at the Elder Financial Protection Center, a place where I could use my own harrowing experience to help other seniors navigate the insidious world of financial abuse. I met women like Brenda, who had lost her life savings to a charming con artist, Vivian, whose daughter had systematically emptied her retirement account, and men like George and Denise, whose trust and family had been ruthlessly exploited. Their stories, heartbreaking as they were, gave me a profound sense of solidarity. The hardest part isn't the money, Brenda had shared in our support group one afternoon. It's learning to trust yourself again after someone you loved makes you feel so foolish, so vulnerable. I nodded, understanding completely. It was a journey I was still on, but I was no longer alone. Beyond the volunteering, I reconnected with old friends, revived my long-neglected book club, and spent countless hours laughing and sharing with Clara, my steadfast sister. Clara, ever perceptive, had remarked during one of our weekly calls, "You know, Eleanor, you seem more like yourself these days, lighter, happier." And she was right. The suffocating anxiety, the gnawing guilt I had carried for so long, had finally lifted. I was planning my own life again, not reacting to Ethan's demands or living under the weight of his expectations. Last spring, I took that Alaska cruise I'd always dreamed of. The glaciers were breathtaking, the wildlife magnificent, but the greatest adventure was entirely unexpected. I met Arthur, a kind, witty retired history professor with a mischievous twinkle in his eye. We shared stories over dinners, laughed over silly mishaps on excursions, and discovered a shared love for classical music. For the first time in decades, I felt the gentle stirrings of new romance, a possibility I had long thought closed off to me. Mr. Davies, always pragmatic, had given me reassuring news. "Your financial security is ironclad, Eleanor. You can certainly afford a more generous lifestyle." It was a liberating thought, especially knowing that my charitable giving, which had once been the unwitting spark for Ethan's desperation, now brought me immense satisfaction and peace. I often thought back to that fateful dinner at Skyline Terrace, to Samuel's whispered warning, to the cold terror that had gripped me. I was grateful, profoundly so, that I had recognized the danger, that I had listened to my instincts, and that I had taken action. It had been the turning point, the moment I chose to fight for myself, for my future. Just last week, Ethan called. His voice was bright, genuinely so this time. He told me about a significant promotion at work, a real one, earned through merit and hard work. "Mom," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice, "I wanted to thank you for not giving up on me completely, for putting those conditions on the trust. I hated you for it at the time. Really, I did. But I understand now that it was exactly what I needed. You saved me, Mom. You really did." He paused, then added, his voice softer, "I hope someday I can be half as strong as you are." His words, simple yet profound, filled me with an unexpected warmth. I had always seen my strength as a quiet, internal thing, born of necessity and survival. But in his recognition, I saw it anew, a power forged through struggle and betrayal, refined into wisdom. At 65, I was finally ready for my own adventures, not just cruises to Alaska, but adventures of the heart and soul, free from the burdens of the past, wise with the lessons learned, and open to the beautiful, unpredictable possibilities of a life truly lived.